Welcome to the DeFi Standard, and this is Mickey B. Fresh. And we got some exciting news once again. Kraken has announced that they are supporting the FLR token airdrop, they are supporting FTSO delegations, and they are supporting trading with FLR USD pair and FLR Euro pair. So this is big news, that the fact that Kraken is going to be offering this FTSO delegation. There's zero compliance risk with offering delegation because they're just delegating vote power to their customers. And Kraken is running a FTSO. But one thing that many people did not know is that Kraken has already been running 4 validators through Staked.us, which is the third infrastructure provider that Flare announced. They acquired Staked.us in December 2021 as one of the largest acquisitions in the history of crypto. They're an institutional staking provider, just like Blockdaemon, just like Figment. Those are probably the big 3, and Kraken is the biggest of all when it comes to staking on their platform. They did over 16 billion in staking in 2021, and over 500 million in rewards were paid out to customers. So why is it beneficial for the Flare network to have Kraken as a FTSO and having their customers delegating? It's because it diversifies the time series oracles, so the data providers, and it signals to the rest of the industry and to the market of exchanges that, oh, Kraken's the biggest when it comes to integrating with blockchains. Well, we better integrate that Flare too. So this is good as a sign to the market. It signals. So I'm not saying that we're going to get Coinbase to offer FTSO delegations right away, but we could, but it's likely that others will follow in suit. And there's also other benefits here. So since they're offering staking, and staking implies that people would stake their FLR. Now, what is FLR used for? Collateral in the F-Assets system. So you could see how Kraken could act as an agent and use that FLR to then earn XRP, BTC, LTC. Therefore, they could pay yield to some of their customers who have Bitcoin, Litecoin, XRP on their platform, because there's really no other way to earn yield unless you go into DeFi and do like what Celsius did and took high risky bets with users' assets in multiple different arrangements. Or you do like what other CeFi platforms do, and I believe Nexo does this. They lend out the assets to other entities that pay a higher yield than what they offer to their customers and then take the difference. That's a riskier bet for the platform than something like acting as an agent, because it's a delta neutral position. You can't get liquidated. They just go back and forth with redemptions and mints, and they earn the fees. So Kraken is getting involved early as an infrastructure provider and as an FTSO. And we have Blockdaemon, who we're going to run through shortly, as one of the biggest infrastructure providers. They run Validators in the XRP Ledger, and they offer to investment banks, exchanges, custodians, you name it, high corporations, they offer that service, and we'll run through the differences of those. But I was very happy to see that one of the most technologically advanced exchanges, Kraken, offering this type of service to the Flare network, which isn't even live yet. So the fact that they're putting this out there is a great sign. The fact that Google partnered with Flare and accepted them in their startup program, which was a limited amount of entities. And we're going to have a video that will come out on the website that will be based on Google's partnership with Flare. soon. So Kraken is also going to be a bank, and Kraken Bank just got one step closer to a Federal Reserve master account. As of March 2022, the Kraken Bank, a subsidiary of the Kraken crypto exchange, received a routing number from the American Bankers Association. And it's getting closer to being granted a Federal Reserve master account, getting the same access to the global payment system as the traditional banks, as we can see in this recent announcement. Crypto companies had a hard time accessing banking services, and if Kraken gets this access, it will be in a good position to serve the market by being as a traditional bank. The American Bankers Association granted Kraken a routing number and brought it one step closer to getting a highly coveted Federal Reserve master account that can allow it to deposit funds with the Fed and get access to the global payment system. Avanti, which is now known as Custodia Bank, got the routing number a month ago. Kraken Bank is a special purpose depository institution, and a specific regulation allowed the companies to support digital asset banking activities. What does this mean? This means that Kraken potentially has the ability to have access to the Fed master accounts. That means that you'll be able to deposit fiat and be able to do it instantly, and they'll also be able to do everything with the global payment system. So this would be great for ODL, and RippleNet could even tap into that because it has instant off-ramps. Now, the tier 2 there is describing something like Protego Bank and Paxos, who received the OCC charter because they're federal regulator by the OCC. Now, and Anchorage is as well. But none of those are retail facing. What makes Kraken unique here is that they're retail facing. They also do corporate and they do institutional. Kraken serves all. And for them to get that routing number, I think, is one step closer to that master account, because it means they're like any other bank then, just like JPM, just like Citi. They're all on equal footing. They get access to the payment system, and you don't have to deal with these, 3-day waits and different things. And that means people can have bank accounts with Kraken. So I think we're going to see this merging of many of the exchanges either become, or CeFi platforms become, these crypto banks where they're, obviously centralized entities, but then they have the safety net and oversight of a traditional bank, but they're agile and they're able to do things much faster than legacy banks. So we'll see that cohort go through, and there might be others in the future, and they don't have to be exchanges. This is why we don't see institutions buying out exchanges, because the model is flawed, and some have done it very well, like Kraken, and some, as we see with FTX, have abused their legacy design systems and taken advantage of some of crypto's advantages by minting their own tokens and using users' funds and being the custodian, being the market maker, and being the trading platform. The exchange should not be the market maker. You don't get liquidity from the exchange. The exchange should just be the trading, transacting platform. And market makers and users provide the liquidity. And the custody should be segregated into separate accounts. Now we're heading in that direction. And also proof of reserves, which isn't, an end-all solution, but at least it's a step in the right direction. Every exchange should be doing that going forward. There should be no excuse. And I know it's not in real time, and there are some gaps in how it's done, but it does use like Merkle trees, and they try to use some of the cryptographic primitives to audit the actual exchange that it has the assets there. But they could have off-chain liabilities. and other things, and it's not real time. So if as they go through, different assets can have fluctuate. Now, we're going to see more legacy institutions come in and try to be crypto-like banks, but they're going to do it in a different way. You're not going to just see a big bank saying, we're going to be a crypto bank. We're going to be in a subsidiary or something of that sort. And that's what we're seeing with, for example, Zodia, who is a crypto custodian of Standard Chartered. Standard Chartered is like the mothership. And they're not going to convert to full digital and crypto overnight. None of these banks are. So why we're not getting a new financial system overnight. Because it takes so long for these legacy institutions. They're so intertwined with their core banking systems that to upgrade is going to take years. But they can have subsidiaries and spin-offs that are agile. So, for example, is Cowen, who's partners with Standard Custody and PolySign. They created Cowen Digital, which is a subsidiary, which now offers global trading of all assets. It offers lending, borrowing, anything you imagine, and they are partners with Standard Custody, but they did it as a subsidiary of the bank. They're not the bank themselves, but they're able to access then all their customers, the hedge funds, the high net worth individuals, and other entities who are their clients, corporate clients. And that is now Cowen's going for a bit license in New York State. So being able to offer all those services is something that needs to be kind of segregated. To offer all-in-one inclusive is very difficult. Like, for example, Coinbase tries to offer that, but you're seeing these exchanges pivot to on the chain. Less and less focus is going to these islands of off-chain trading and just speculating on Bitcoin going up or down, because the actual utility is starting to be born from these blockchains and from these assets on them, and then the applications that are built on them. But to do all that, you need infrastructure, and you need different layer ones that are mature enough, decentralized enough, and robust enough to be able to handle those applications. Flare is able, out the gate, to be decentralized in its consensus with these 4 major infrastructure providers running 4 validators each, and then Flare Foundation runs 4. So we have the security and safety and decentralization out the gate for the Flare network before the token generation event or airdrop even occurs. That's unheard of. Now, that will become more decentralized over time as FTSOs start mixing in as validators and taking some of the validation power. But they're still, between those 4 different entities, fairly decentralized. And the number of validators and number of nodes does not always equivalent to decentralization. As we know, with the Ethereum and Ethereum maxis love to spin that narrative that the most validators and most nodes mean decentralized. But when you could front run transactions and put them in front of other users and, extract value, minor extractable value, that's not decentralized. I don't care what you say. That's the opposite of decentralized. And when you have no governance and a group of developers make the decisions in the, behind closed doors, that's not decentralized. So there's different levels of decentralization, and a lot of the industry throws it out there like it's just one thing. Like, oh, it has more validators, so it's more decentralized. No, it's not the case. And when things can be rolled back, Ethereum was rolled back after the DAO hack. XRP Ledger was never rolled back. So track records speak for themselves. So watch the narratives. But this fact that Kraken is going to offer the FTSO delegations is big. This shows that the community should be paying attention. This is the most prominent staking exchange on the planet. They do the most. Like if you're going, there's certain reasons why users and people use Kraken for staking is because they don't have the unbonding period of a lot of these networks. Like Polkadot's 28 days, I believe. Cosmos is 21 days for all their networks. Kraken allows you to go in and out. So that's sometimes why you see users use that, even though their yield is less than if they went directly to the blockchain. But some people don't want to deal with that. They don't want to open a specific wallet for that network. And maybe there's some people that don't want to do that with Flare. They just want, hey, I want my exchange account. If they're going to be a bank, then I'm going to have my account there. I'm going to delegate, and that's it. And I'll take a little less yield. And then there's going to be people going to be like, I want my own wallet. I want to custody my own asset. I want to be my own bank. I want to earn my distribution rewards too, because we don't know. It does not say here what they're going to do when it comes to distribution rewards. That I'm sure we'll find out in the future. But I would think those would be either passed on to the user, but since there's 3 random snapshots every month, whatever that exchange is holding, so Kraken's holdings at that time of wrapped FLR. So you could only delegate if you wrap Flare. Now, can't trade wrapped Flare. They don't offer that. So everybody who's delegating on the exchange, it can't be put out there for a limit order, at some price. It's now, theoretically, it's locked in a way. So it's off the circulating supply. And since there's every 3.5 days, FTSO rewards are distributed, that means you're going to rarely see much of that delegation going back onto the trading market. So the more delegation we have, and it will be low in the beginning, it will be low. And that's why it's an opportunity for all of us. Anyone who's listening to this right now knows that already. But it's going to increase. Like Staked.us put out a report, and it shows here that Cardano has almost 80% staked. That's amazing. And that's one of the reasons why they're in the top cryptos. And they also have a huge ecosystem of dApps being developed. And we're going to see that on Flare Network. But what Flare is building is something different. We're going to come out the gate with these protocols that are Oracle systems and attestation systems that are built into Flare that allow for cross-chain applications right out the gate. And they will have the ability to be able to tap into multiple different networks. Now, the relayer is a video coming out on that I will talk about, and same with Google Cloud. But here, let's run into what some of the other infrastructure providers offer. Blockdaemon's going to run an FTSO, so let's go to their thing, because they talk about Flare. I mean, they straight up talk about it. Blockdaemon offers institutional grade Flare infrastructure. On-chain data and staking services. Whether you're a developer that needs end-to-end managed nodes, or you're a financial institution that want to earn maximum yield on your assets with validator nodes, we have you covered. Then they do a white label validator node. Lets anyone run their own validator node and white label it on their own name. And our white label validator nodes are non-custodial. You keep your keys, 99.9% uptime, eliminating double signing, market-leading node performance. And then they have, if you want to test out our node performance before investing in a validator node, or don't have the minimum Flare tokens to run your own validator, so it might mean vote power, consider delegating to a Blockdaemon public validator. So they have to be FTSOs, the validators. They have to, because it's the way that they come to as part of the consensus. They need a reward rate, and they need some type of vote power. Even if the vote power is static, this is going to level out when we delegate. So I'm like 95% sure, but I'm not 100, that it's going to be very different on Flare. You're going to be not going to the top 5 and saying, oh, I'm going to pick this one this week. It's going to be significantly different when you have blockchains like Kraken, these infrastructure providers, other FTSOs that aren't on Songbird that hit that 2.5% vote power. That's the only thing that I'm wondering. What if Kraken hits that max vote power? Now, do they just get locked out like what BitTrue does when you can't get in? It's like, first come, first serve. Flare brought in now 4 infrastructure providers on purpose, deliberately, to kick the network off so that it wasn't solely dependent on just these FTSOs who have no experience running validators when the network launched. So they were slowly going to extend the transition of validation power ultimately to all the FTSOs, but it's going to be over a period of 6 to 9 months from the time beta started. So they'll earn rewards, but they'll slowly be decreasing. Now, I don't know where they're getting the vote power from. I'm sure they're getting delegated some from Flare to get going. But at some point, I would think, if they're earning off this, they're going to be a stakeholder. They're going to earn the distribution. They're going to earn their own FTSO rewards, just like they do on all the other networks. They're stakeholders and participants. But yeah, I'm sure they got Flare's doing those grants, and I'm sure they, had to get incentivized to, run all that infrastructure's costs. They're doing this themselves. So they're running 4 probably on Flare, 4 on the testnet, plus they're also likely running nodes, which they have anyway, on these other networks. And that's the benefit to Flare. So they already have infrastructure on Bitcoin, Litecoin, and all these other networks. So if Flare is looking to connect everything and, tie that multi-chain clients together for their state connector system and the attesters, this is exactly who you would use. And then you slowly have them bring on other entities. And then some of the FTSOs that don't feel comfortable running it themselves, they just, go through Blockdaemon. But they do earn a reward, though. It's like 2% of inflation. Now, it's out of the 10% inflation rate, 20% of that 10% goes to validators. Now, if they're not getting reward rate and they're not doing vote power, then they got to be staking. So that's the only other thing in this mix that might be. Because remember, Hugo said, well, if there's like collusion and other things, we want to slash. So the only way you could slash is somebody's got to be putting up some amount. So here's a presentation from Blockdaemon talking about institutional grade staking infrastructure and some of the services that they offer to investment banks, custodians, fintechs, and other crypto firms to be able to stake in a non-custodial way using Blockdaemon. They could either white label and run their own validator node, or they can use the infrastructure of Blockdaemon themselves. Blockdaemon has grown exponentially in the last 2 years. They are the largest infrastructure provider in all of crypto, and they strictly deal with institutional and enterprise.
We offer institutions the ability to run to stake directly to our public validators, or run white-labeled validators themselves to actually manage that for their existing clients, and stake assets to over 30 different protocols. Really difficult to maintain yourself. Each protocol has different requirements around validator sets, and for you to be able to earn rewards through those validators, extremely difficult for you to keep that up running. And we guarantee across all the risk mitigations on that. So if protocols are imposing certain slashing rules, which essentially cut into your rewards. We provide a lot of guarantees around that, and we cover that 100%. So our infrastructure helps you kind of mitigate those risks. And we integrate with various different custodians. One of the challenges around staking is, moving your keeping your assets at your custodian and being able to stake those assets on chain, and making sure that you earn your rewards, but your assets stay with your custodian. And we're a non-custodial staking provider, which facilitates that process. And through that period, one of the key elements is to actually see how many rewards you've earned while staking. So if you're using a provider, they should be able to be telling you how your rewards have been earned over that period.
These validators, infrastructure providers, are going to be providing bandwidth provider services, agent services, and attester software.
That someone like Blockdaemon might package it up for people to just run it out of the box.
Well, we were talking about bandwidth providing and making it easier for folks who want to do that. So yes, Blockdaemon is happy to help.
And that's what makes this really powerful, is they already have nodes on every network, and so they have some of the biggest investors. So in the early rounds, they had the typical crypto VCs. But in the later rounds, they had companies like Goldman, Citibank, Salesforce. There were some big names on there that invested in them, but they came in the later rounds. So it just goes to show that these entities ultimately are going to be looking to run infrastructure. I mean, this is where we're headed. Banks aren't going to build their own infrastructure. So these infrastructure providers and these data analytic companies are going to get bigger and bigger. And Google's entry into Web3 is just huge. It's huge. That's going to bring in open the floodgates for the developers. And with the jobs market in the way it is in the US and around the rest of the world, you might see more and more developers flooding in. Plus, you have the younger generation coming out of college and universities that are looking Web3 blockchain. We see more and more course offerings. So this is where the market needs to improve, is infrastructure is not up to par for institutional level adoption, from exchanges to on-chain. So where we're talking, there's two different types of infrastructures. You have an exchange who trades off-chain, trading in a database on a legacy system. And then you have on-chain infrastructure, the actual blockchain. So when you look at an exchange and you see a ticker symbol, that doesn't mean it's on a blockchain, because it's not. It's trading off-chain. For example, if you see a FLR IOU on Bitrue, that's not the token, it's just a ticker. The actual assets exist only on the blockchains and only on their native blockchain. Can't bridge an asset off of it. You could represent it on another blockchain in some form, just like they do with FXRP and other wrap types of assets. But the native asset always remains on the network. And that's what gives it value, is that its network value is what's backing it. And everyone always asks, what backs crypto? Well, it's its network. Its network of users. It's networks of accounts. And FLR is trying to connect all of these blockchains to FLR, ultimately. So having infrastructure providers like this out the gate that are then going to be able to provide the software and the packages, like in the video earlier, where Hugo said, we're going to package it up as bandwidth providers so that entities can run that. And with FLR, there is no permissioned access to anything. Anything that has to do with the actual blockchain network, layer 1, or the applications that the FLR team is building. So F-Assets and Layercake are separate from the actual blockchain, but F-Assets are governed by the FLR token holders. But anyone can be a bandwidth provider, anyone can be an agent, anyone can run an FTSO, anyone could be a validator. Anyone can be an attester. There are certain steps to be a validator and a tester. You have to be a FTSO first. But the idea here is that everyone is treated fairly and equally. That is so important to understand. And it's all trustless and decentralized. Even the F-Asset system and Layercake will be trustless and decentralized. Those are powerful components because there's so many solutions out there and there's so many networks that are not. And we know from seeing things like Ethereum, absolutely not. They want to claim decentralization, but they're not. Because when you could have miners front run transactions and put things in order, that is not decentralization. I don't care how many nodes you have. So there's different types of decentralization, but trustless is also another thing. And then having a diversity of the ability for anyone to run nodes and run validators. And the fact that these roles exist. So by FLR building these applications of F-Assets and Layercake and having the FTSO system there, you create these roles for enterprises, institutions, retail, and then for other protocols or DAOs to play that role or integrate with that.
From the technical perspective, I don't know who I'm allowed to mention or not. So I'll not mention anyone except for maybe, infrastructure projects wise. There's quite a few that are setting up their infrastructure. My favorite is Blockdaemon. Like, I met some of the guys, John, in Paris Blockchain. I met Chuck, who's responsible for running the Flare nodes. Like, an amazing team. It's really great to see them run our infrastructure partly. But there's like many of those. And then on the complete other side of the spectrum, there's also tons of user-facing projects that have to do with NFTs and anything in between, really. And when I came on board, I was really impressed with the work that had happened behind the scenes by the founders to build all of these relationships and connections. And there's really a lot of traction that is still a bit under the surface. But like every day, we are answering questions from partners and trying to help them set up the tech. So a lot is going on, and I'm quite excited about the next couple of months.
And they also work with Google Cloud. Blockdaemon does. So that's our number one is Blockdaemon. So they're huge, and they're also going to help these dApps. They're going to help them get infrastructure up. So they're a core component of the starting of the FLR network. This will help them build out the F-Asset system faster, build out Layercake faster. And then we got Figment. So Figment.io is probably the second biggest infrastructure provider. And they're on over 50 chains as well, just like Blockdaemon is. And they're connected to multiple different protocols. And they're also a partner with Standard Custody. So Standard Custody has only publicly announced, and that's PolySign's subsidiary, that they're using Solana publicly. But soon, they'll be doing all of the bigger protocols. So Figment is a big one. Just to see them get those two on board is excellent. But it's this third one that probably was the most surprising when I looked into. And I think this will be a shock to many people. So it's called staked.us. Most people haven't heard of it, right? Doesn't sound anything familiar. I looked into it, and they were acquired by Kraken Exchange, who is the biggest staking and DeFi of the exchanges and the most advanced technologically, in December 2021. Staked to support growth and resilience in one of the largest crypto industry deals to date. Kraken, one of the world's largest digital asset platforms, announced it had acquired Staked for an undisclosed sum in one of the largest crypto industry acquisitions to date. And I think this was December. So Staked is a non-custodial staking platform that enables investors in proof-of-stake networks to easily and securely compound their holdings. The acquisition solidifies Kraken's position as a leading provider of staking services to consumers and institutions by expanding the number of supported networks. Well, let me see. Do they say it in here? Oh, they do. So they grew by 950% and did 16 billion in staking volume in November, it says. I think that's for the year. So for the whole year, that was last year. And that resulted in $500 million in rewards getting paid out to their clients. And their spot margins and future trading grew 430% last year. I mean, there was the bull run last year. But in general, the staking has just exploded, and it's given them a new source of revenue. And it's something else besides just transaction fees of trading. So the success of our staking business demonstrates that Kraken has evolved into much more than a custodian and a trading venue. We've become a holistic crypto platform with a diverse range of products that serves the needs of retail, professional, and institutional clients. Heading into our second decade in our company's history, I'm excited about the future of Kraken's continued support in the world's shift to Web3 and DeFi. So they came about in 2011. Jesse Powell was an early investor in Ripple. They have 2,300 employees. So that's a lot of employees. And they are the largest exchange in Europe and 8.5 million traders. So they're going to be running an FTSO, and they're an infrastructure provider for Flare. They're both retail, institutional. So they seem like they're going to be a integral part here. I mean, they came out and supported Songbird. They'll have an FTSO. Like, I think that is one of those tier one exchanges that will signal to the rest of the industry and the other exchanges, like, hey, this is something, we should probably take a look at if they didn't already, when Kraken's going to come out and do that. And here's what their website did look like. And here's some of the partners. So this was a huge deal that when they bought them out, Digital Currency Group, Multi-Chain, Pantera, Winklevoss, something that's going to be, I think, of interest with other products going forward in the future. Like, I think what they could see here is they could get yield on Bitcoin. I mean, if they participate in some way in the F-Asset system, they could definitely pay a lower risk yield to their users for some of those F-Assets and even Layercake than what they're paying right now. Because how do you get yield on Bitcoin? I mean, there's not much out there right now. Even on XRP, I mean, what is Nexo paying right now on lending? I don't think it's much. Hugo's made it a point to bring up the relevance of delegating vote power to like staking, because even though it doesn't have the drawbacks, it's what's popular, big right now, right? Everything is staking. And that's what's exploded these exchanges to pivot towards catering to the on-chain services for their customers. And it's also brought institutional interest that they could stake some of these assets that are blue chip cryptos, earn a couple % yield, and they're more likely to hold them. And you can't do that with Bitcoin. So the top three here are like true infrastructure for providers. That's what they do. And now that's Kraken, really. Kraken runs their own validators on these blockchains, and they've done it for a while now. And they just, have a high commission rate. So they do it instead of going through another validator. They just, make the commission rate really high. And they'll probably do the same thing with the FTSO. But I mean, 20% is probably more than the commission rate on most of these proof of stake networks. So they'll probably just keep it at the top. We're going to see. And what is Flare? Flare is a data provisioning network in itself. So the head of engineering at Flare, Josh Edwards, said, "It's been an absolutely awesome working with each of our validator partners on this one. They are all at the forefront of blockchain infrastructure technology and are doing a fantastic job." Fire emojis. So this is good to hear from Flare's engineers that they feel that way, because once Flare's done building the network and the blockchain, they're handing it over. Like, it just hands over to the whole network that runs it. The nodes, the validators, it runs itself. But they have this is the final chance to put everything in place and make sure everything's good to go most networks, almost every network that has launched, has never launched decentralized. Flare is going to literally launch decentralized. That's unheard of, unprecedented. I still don't understand how the community does not see that as massive. So Into the Block is the next one, which is a data intelligence company. Very interesting that they are the fourth one. So initially it was only supposed to be 3 validators, 3 infrastructure providers running 4 validators each. Now it's 4. So one of those was, I think it was Into the Block was added because they are intelligence. They have all the data analytics on DeFi and on-chain analysis. They basically, these are becoming more and more prevalent, we're going to see. And what is Flare? Flare is a data provisioning network in itself. It's kind of out of the ordinary a little, but it does all on-chain signals and data analytics, and they're into that. So they don't do necessarily staking or infrastructure. So they likely, being the fourth one down, were the fourth added, because initially it was supposed to only be 3 infrastructure providers. Our network at the very beginning of launch, like probably more crucial than the retail FTSOs, because they actually can bring with them institutional money and all those who held, say, XRP. And we know there's institutional investors, hedge funds that held XRP all around the world that are getting FLR. So, maybe they didn't do anything with Songbird, but now they have these ways to either delegate, run their own FTSOs and provide services, become agents, become bandwidth providers, and be able to be part of the ecosystem. So now they're able right there, provide this infrastructure for them. And stay under custody, I would think they would support Flare. You keep it in cold storage. It doesn't even ever come to risk. And even like something like iTrust, there's no reason why any of these institutions or exchanges should have a problem with letting people delegate. It's literally less risk than every staking token there is out there, because you're just delegating vote power. And that's how they built it. But technically, decentralization has been achieved and in beta mode. So when you're launching a network at this scale with this technology that's novel, with a new consensus, so even though you're using avalanches, they're modifying it and using reward rate and vote power in place of it instead of stake. And that's key. And then you're building a whole stake connector system that's going to connect all the different networks together. It's not just a tagline, connect everything. And I think that gets thrown around a lot in the industry. They literally are connecting everything. And that's where that partnership with Google Cloud is going to be very big. Not sponsored by them or nothing. I don't do that. I don't have anything against people who do it. That's fine. It's just not my thing.